It started on one of those rainy Portland afternoons, the kind that makes the whole city look like it's been dipped in gray paint. I remember sitting on the couch, half-dressed, one sock on, one off, staring at a cold cup of coffee that I didn't even want anymore. The apartment was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that buzzes inside your head. Laura had left earlier that morning, saying she was going to meet some friends for brunch. She wore that beige trench coat I bought her last spring, the one that always made her look like she'd stepped out of a movie. The scent of her perfume still hung in the air. It felt stronger than usual, clinging to the room like a secret that didn't want to leave. Time slipped by. I scrolled through my phone, tossed it aside, wandered from the couch to the kitchen and back again. The rain outside kept tapping the window like it was trying to say something. But then, in the middle of that silence, I heard a sound that didn't belong, a short, vibrating buzz. Laura's phone. She'd left it on the counter. I wasn't even looking for trouble. I just noticed it light up. A name appeared across the screen, Eli Automobile dashing away. The preview beneath it was short, maybe just a few words, but they hit me like a punch to the chest. It wasn't what it said exactly, it was how it looked. Familiar. Casual. Too comfortable. Something in me tightened. My hand hovered above the phone like I was touching something radioactive. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But I did. And then the messages opened, line after line of conversations that started harmless and then didn't. Late-night texts. Half-jokes that weren't really jokes. Photos from bars, inside jokes I wasn't part of. Each message was a small slice of the truth, and together they built a picture I didn't want to see. There it was, proof that something between us had cracked while I wasn't paying attention. I set the phone back down slowly, like it might explode if I dropped it. The rain outside got louder. The apartment didn't feel like mine anymore, her perfume still floated in the air, her mug still on the counter, but everything felt hollow, staged, fake. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring out the window as the reflection of my face blurred with the rain. And that's when the thought hit me, cold, clear, and sharp. If there's one thing worse than knowing you've been lied to, it's not knowing how deep the lie goes. And I needed to know. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the fridge and the quiet rain outside. Every sound in the apartment felt exaggerated, the pipes, the creak of the floorboards, even the sound of my own heartbeat. Laura came home late. I pretended to be asleep when she slipped into bed beside me, smelling faintly of wine and rain. Her breathing steadied fast, like someone who had nothing to hide. But I could feel it now. The distance. The coldness in the space between us. The next morning, she left early again, same coat, same story, meeting friends. But something in her tone didn't fit. Too casual. Too polished. I waited a few minutes, then grabbed my jacket and keys. My chest buzzed with this nervous energy, like I was doing something illegal but justified. Outside, the city was still wet from the night before. I followed her car through the quiet Portland streets, past the bookstore we used to visit, past the little bakery where she once made me promise we'd grow old together. The irony stung. She parked near an old building downtown, one of those converted warehouse spaces with peeling murals and too much artsy charm. I watched her step out, check her phone, and walk inside. 10 minutes later, someone else arrived. A guy, tall, dark jacket, messy hair, parked a few cars away and went into the same building. Eli. My pulse spiked. I waited another minute, then got out of my car. The rain had started again, soft but cold, misting the air with that sharp metallic smell. I crept closer, keeping my hood up, staying behind a line of dumpsters. The sign above the door read Luna Studio. Through one of the windows, I saw them. Laura stood near a table, laughing at something Eli said. There were canvases stacked against the walls, brushes, lights, music playing low in the background. It looked innocent enough, two people working. But her body language gave it away. That easy lean, the soft smile, the kind of comfort you don't fake. They moved together like they'd done it 100 times before. I felt my throat tighten, that hot, blurry kind of anger that makes your hands tremble. I wasn't even sure what I wanted, to burst in, to leave, to scream, to cry. Instead, I just stood there in the rain, watching through a crack in the blinds like some stranger who'd lost everything. At one point, Eli reached out, brushed a streak of paint off her cheek. She laughed, swatted his hand away, but didn't move. That was it. I turned away before I could see more. Back in my car, I sat in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't even drive home right away. I just sat there, watching the rain drip down the windshield, feeling like the world had gone flat and colorless. But even through the pain, something inside me was awake, sharp, alert, hungry for truth. Because what I saw didn't look like love. It looked like something else. Something secret, tangled, maybe even darker than I wanted to believe. And I knew I couldn't stop here. If I wanted to understand what really happened between them, I'd have to go deeper. The next day, I woke up to a gray sky, heavy clouds pressing down on the city like a warning. My apartment felt smaller than ever, the walls too close, the air too thick with the memory of last night. I moved mechanically, showered, dressed, ate something I didn't taste, and left. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective. I drove past familiar corners, the coffee shop where we used to meet, the park where she used to laugh while I tried to throw a frisbee, but my eyes were only on her. On Eli. On every possible clue I could follow. Luna's studio was closed during the day, but I circled the block, watching through the front windows, pretending to glance at graffiti or check my phone. I noticed small things, a canvas propped up against the door, fresh paint still drying, footprints leading toward the side alley, a faint smell of turpentine in the air. Every tiny detail was a thread I could pull, a breadcrumb to something bigger. I spent hours there, shifting between the shadows of parked cars, leaning against walls, tracing her movements through phone updates and online hints. Each observation twisted my stomach tighter, but also sharpened my focus. Every laugh I overheard on the phone when she called a friend, every photo she posted, suddenly seemed loaded with meaning. By nightfall, I was tired but restless, my body aching from standing too long, my mind running in circles. That's when I saw her again, leaving the studio, phone in hand, umbrella barely covering her. She looked different. Her face had a guarded edge, a tension she tried to hide under practiced smiles. I followed her to a small, nondescript apartment building a few blocks away. She swiped her key, entered, and I waited, pacing the street. I didn't want to make a scene, didn't want her to see me, yet every instinct screamed at me to confront, to demand answers. Hours passed. The building went quiet. I leaned against the wall, shivering slightly from the cold and anticipation. Then, just as I was about to leave, I saw Eli slip into the building. Not a casual visitor, he carried a bag, moved cautiously, as though he had something to hide. Something inside me snapped. I didn't know what I would do next, but I knew one thing clearly. I couldn't let this go. Not without seeing everything, not without understanding why Laura had chosen secrecy, why Eli existed in this shadow world where I was only a spectator. My pulse hammered as I made a decision. Tonight, I wouldn't just follow. I would enter. The hallway inside the building smelled faintly of damp carpet and old paint, a mixture that made my stomach twist. I moved quietly, keeping to the shadows, ears straining for any sound. The apartment door was slightly ajar, and through the narrow crack, I saw them, Laura and Eli, sitting close on the couch, heads bent together over something on Eli's laptop. The room was dimly lit, only a single desk lamp casting long, twisting shadows across the walls. Every detail hit me with painful clarity, the way Laura's hand brushed against Eli's, the subtle laughter that didn't reach her eyes, the tension in the way they leaned toward each other. I felt a cold burn in my chest, a mixture of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. I tried to steady myself, inhaling sharply, feeling the rough texture of the wall under my fingers. My mind raced through every memory we had shared, dinners, late-night drives, quiet mornings. Every ordinary moment suddenly felt like a carefully constructed lie, a stage set for something I wasn't allowed to see. As they got up, moving toward the small balcony, I realized I had no right to intervene yet. I couldn't let them sense my presence, I had to observe, to gather every piece of this hidden puzzle before the confrontation. I crouched behind a narrow wall divider, the sounds of their movements amplified in my ears, the clink of the laptop closing, the soft murmur of words I couldn't catch. Then, a sudden shift. Eli's phone buzzed on the counter. Laura picked it up, glanced at the screen, and froze. That single motion, that hesitation, was a crack in their carefully built world. I could feel the tension stretch across the room, thick and heavy. My pulse thundered, and in that moment, I knew the next steps I took would change everything. I pushed the door open slightly, the floor creaking under my weight. They turned sharply, eyes wide. Laura's gaze locked with mine, and for a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. The vulnerability, the fear, the guilt, it all collided with the anger and pain that had been building inside me for weeks. I stepped fully into the room, my voice calm but firm, cutting through the haze of tension. Eli froze, caught off guard, while Laura's face betrayed the truth I had been dreading but also expecting. I didn't need words to confirm it. The room, the shadows, the late-night city beyond the window, it all felt suspended in that moment. Everything had led to this confrontation, every observation, every sleepless night, every anxious pulse. And now, there was no turning back. I realized then that the story of us, the story I had lived, had fractured irreparably. The world I thought I knew safe, familiar, ours, had been shattered by secrets, by choices, by betrayal. And standing there, in the quiet aftermath of revelation, I understood that moving forward would never be simple. Not for me, not for her, not for anyone involved. The night stretched on, heavy with the weight of truth, with the echo of what had been lost, and with the faint, distant hope that one day, clarity could emerge from the chaos.